Got it.
Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance with my co-host Gretchen Spletzer, and this is our monthly forum. So Gretchen, it's an exciting one. So let's introduce our guests.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Tonight we are doing a forum on Latin America, and we have some great guests with us. We are going to be talking with Philippe from Imasol Caskets, which is a Colombian casket company that makes biodegradable caskets. And we're going to be talking to Michelle Puga, who lives in Ecuador. She leads the Death Talk Cuenca, which is a community-based initiative that creates space for meaningful conversations around death, dying, and grief. We also have David Chacon, who is based in Guatemala City, and he is wanting to start a cemetery in his country. So we're really excited to talk about what he's got going on and what he knows about that. He's an artist where he lives, a tattoo artist as well. We have Wilka Roig. She is the president of the Mexican Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation and transpersonal psychologist. She's also the head of the Red Latina group that is doing a lot of work in Latin America for death doula and education and green burials. She's just got a lot of stuff under her belt, so we're going to put all of these bios with this recording when we do it. We have Veronica Falcone, who is the death doula and educator, as well as the CEO of the Life Earns Project. And she's also from Ecuador and also an artist. And all these people are just the leaders in Latin America about green burial. And then Bosque de Vida Cemetery, I'm saying that right. We have them with us. It's Esteban is with us, and he is in a little town up in a cloud forest, I believe, above Mexico City, southeastern Mexico, it says here in Veracruz. So if you haven't checked out his Facebook page on Bosque de Vida, Facebook is just incredible to see how pretty it is up there and what they're doing in that cemetery. So those are our guests, and I wanted to start this talk because green burial, it's a new thing, but it's also a very old thing. We've been doing it from the beginning of time throughout history. And I know Wilka knows about how that was done in the old times in Latin America. And I think it's fascinating to know how different cultures used to take care of their people who passed away. And I just would love to start our talk off with that, Wilka, if you wouldn't mind. Hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you, Gretchen, Ed, and everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. I cannot speak for all of Latin America or even anything specific, but some of the things that we can trace back, and I think I invite everyone to explore and study more and learn more about what were the funeral rites in your lands and how, your people used to commemorate the relationship with mortality, life and death as a two things that go hand in hand, and then how we honored these transitions as part of what feeds more life, right? So there's all of that I recommend that you all dive deeper into exploring for your culture and your ancestors and all of that. But we know that there are a very broad range of how we handle our remains, even to this day, right? And that we have sort of moved away from the way that we understood it to naturally occur. This sort of life and death feed each other, and that there's something important that we have as a responsibility to future generations with how we live our lives and then how we deal with our dying and our remains. But what I'll say is that, in the area that I live and work in central Mexico, and I think, even down into all of Mesoamerica, there were it was part of our way of relating that we would return the body to the earth, that there was, in a very simple way and maybe wrapped in some kind of weaved textile, or sometimes in like clay pots. And there were many symbolic elements that went into this return to the womb of the earth, right? And that in a way, with green burial and natural burial and conservation burial, we are rescuing some of those traditions, which are still in the memory of some today, right? It's not so far behind in our history that we were still burying our loved ones directly in the ground with more awareness, I think, and responsibility to what gave us life and how we continue to give life. So, I guess I'll just give that very,
Yep.
generalized summary.
So I'm wondering, so did the funeral industry take off in Latin America following what happened with us in the United States? Like, our story is it happened around the Civil War, and that's when embalming got involved, and that's sort of when it turned into more of an industry and got taken out of the hands of families. So would you say that Latin America kind of just followed that example along, or did they develop their own industry on their own?
I think it's a combination of things. And I think, in Latin America, we have many layers of influence of different cultures that came in after colonization or during and after colonization. I was doing some excavation. I was going to use that word, about the funeral rites of the ancestors in the island of Puerto Rico, where I was born and raised. And how it's fascinating to, it's a very small island, and it was a very peaceful people. And there is little to no evidence of remains, which is very interesting because it leads us to think about how what happened to the remains of the deceased, right? Were they returned to the water? Were they left out in the open? There are some suggestions that possibly the bodies were just left out, so they were not actually buried, right? So it's interesting to think about what is the relationship that each cosmovision had with nature, and in which ways were they offering the deceased to return to become, to become part of the bigger nature. But I think that in Puerto Rico, for example, and I think maybe sometime, some of Mexico and some of the other countries that were colonized by the Spanish, there were traditions that were coming from that culture, and that, in Spain, of how were the remains being dealt with. And so I think what we see is maybe a combination between that Catholic tradition that came in, and then whatever was happening in the United States, that results in what we have today. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and well, I'm not sure about Spain, but I know, being to Italy, it's all in raised mausoleums. I would think maybe Spain might be the same. Yeah. So
Yes.
interesting, the
And
history.
Michelle wants to say something, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just gonna compliment what Wilka was saying, and I feel like one of the how we got disconnected for these very natural ways of coming. One of them was religion, Catholicism, and that Catholicism in South America is very, very strong.
Right.
And anything that was related to how they treat the dead bodies and everything came through the source. So yes, we had also some other sources, like whatever was happening in North America, so in Europe and such. But I feel like mostly was a very religion thing, even until now. So as Wilka mentioned, is like we have both. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty here. I don't think that we got completely disconnected from the natural ways in Latin
Hmm.
America, because we still have a lot of communities that they do their own ways. They have their ancestral ways of doing things, and they
Right.
haven't lost them. And in some of the countries, they actually protect these traditions. So
Oh,
in
that.
this way, that's how we've been able to keep doing them. Of course,
Yeah.
it's every time is less as civilization kept growing and growing and taking on ownership of all these traditions and such. But
Mhm.
I feel like yeah, the Catholicism was a very strong thing here in Latin America to see how things were moved.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
think would be interesting? And that was very well put, Michelle. Uh, for our listeners in particular, it would be nice to hear all of your voices. So if you guys could all just say, what is common practice now within the region you're in? And we all do realize influence, Michelle, like you said, the influence of people coming from the outside, but the tradition always remains the same. So if everybody could just lightly touch on what is, for instance, we'll start with you, Michelle, because you just spoke. What is common practice now in your region?
Okay, maybe Vero, you can help me out on this one too. But I feel like there's a mix, especially in the Andes where I live, that the indigenous culture and let's say the mestizos, we've been able to kind of blend together kind of the traditions from the Catholicism with the traditions that they had their own traditions. So what we've been able to do is like someone I think Wilka mentioned, like we used to do the clay pot burials before.
Yes.
Yes.
I
So
think
what
that's
they
so interesting. Yeah.
exactly, but
Mhm.
the how like in the indigenous cosmovision, this was coming to the womb of Mother Earth and
Mhm.
coming back to the ground and back to the womb. Uh, but how for me it's interesting how in during the colonization times they start kind of trying to blend these traditions from our ancestors towards a vision of the Catholicism. So they
Mhm.
is like they didn't want it to force it completely. Like no, this is wrong. This is that no. So we have this, but now there's this saint here that's gonna bless this thing, or
Mhm.
this is gonna be this tradition, and this is I don't. I'm guessing Saint Francisco's Day, and this is when these things has to happen. And little by little, they start blending together, so they get towards that. So that's
Mhm.
some of the things that sometimes
It's
happen
like they
here. I'm not sure,
merged,
Vero, if you know more.
yeah, like merged them in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, yes, it's very interesting what Michelle says. And it's like very interesting in our country, in Ecuador. We have like these all indigenous communities from the jungle or from the Andes or even from the coast, not too much in the coast, but
Hmm.
each group of indigenous people has their own traditions. So what Michelle was saying, it's interesting because there's this kind of blend that she told us. It's I don't know exactly the word in English, but it's like this syncretism that
Hmm. Hmm.
our indigenous people, since all the Catholic colonialism in our countries, they started to give other names
Hmm.
like Catholic names to their own saints. So it's very interesting that we have like we still have our own traditions and saints and everything, but there are like this synchronicity
Hmm. That's right. You said it right. Hmm.
with the Catholic saints. And
Yeah.
the rituals, in the funerary rituals, is much more interesting because there is when we really can see our traditions, like all the rituals. I don't know, for example, in the burials, in some traditions, they gave, for example, fruits, coffee, flowers
Mhm.
to the dead person. So it's
Mhm.
very symbolic. It's like all this symbolism in each
Yeah.
tradition. So that's amazing. That's amazing. And it really makes me like really happy to have these roots, you know, because
Mhm.
these roots are in our people, even though
Yes.
we have like a lot of, yes, like a lot of extra traditions from other countries. And
Yeah.
now we are seeing what other countries in Europe, in the United States, have done in these times, I think more since the pandemic, maybe, with
Mhm.
other options to the people.
Mhm.
So that is interesting too, because the young people that have these roots and still use these symbolic, yes, like reasons and rituals and things, they're
Mhm.
connected not to be in a cemetery. They don't want to be in the cemetery anymore.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting what's happening. They want to go back to Earth.
To the earth. You know, and I also feel that part of it, and I might be wrong, but there's a lot of wisdom in the indigenous cultures in South America. There's many cultures there with so much wisdom, and I feel like in the last decade that has been recognized by the young people of the West as well. They're going down there, they're wanting to learn the traditions, they're drinking ayahuasca, they're, doing different things and learning these old traditions and this sacred wisdom. And I think that has an effect on down the line into death as well. Things are changing. Don't you feel that? It also down there south of the border, you feel it changing? That's good. That's
Yes,
good.
that field is changing, and it's changing like in a very huge way. Just
Mm-hmm.
because we are changing our mind because we are giving our vision to other options. So it's
Yeah.
changing very fast.
And acknowledging the wisdom that you already always had. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. Well, I want to hear from David back there. I see him on my screen and I have not talked to you or met you. So tell us about you and what it's like where you live and what you're up to.
Thank you. Well, as you said, my name is David. I'm actually beginning to become accustomed to this being an international thing, because to give you a little bit of context, Guatemala is really small, and we have over 24 recognized languages, indigenous languages. Um, I felt very close to what you guys were sharing from Mexico and Ecuador, because I think that some of the background is shared. But to expand a little bit on the context, 60% of our people live in rural areas. Less
Mm-hmm.
than 40% have access to electricity.
Oh, wow.
So even though tradition has actually mixed with Catholicism and Christianism in general, we have very huge contrasts, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
people normally don't use embalming because they don't have access to it.
Right.
Because actually getting to a community takes half of a day of travel, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in our context, our traditions have mixed out of necessity sometimes. So we have also very interesting things. For example, we have religious leaders that kind of conduct, like Catholic priests that conduct Mayan ceremonies. Uh, so
Mm-hmm.
we have that in our rural area, and that's why in I talked to Ed about this, because it makes our law contemplate this sort of burial. For us, it never stopped. For us,
Right. Yeah.
60% of our people are still doing it the traditional way, because that's the only way that they have access to. And I believe that that's actually a huge advantage, because it allows us to connect deeply with our roots and to actually
Mm-hmm.
use that as a way, as you said, to bring it back to the people that live in the cities the people that are actually interested on knowing what's going to happen to them. Because in our tradition, since people own land where they cultivate their own food, they kind of have this system of sharing and not. They actually bury their families in their own lands. So introducing that to the rest of the population, it's the key. But since this is something that has been an ongoing situation for us throughout the beginning of our culture, it's easier to bring it back to the roots and to bring it as a way to go back to what we originally were meant to do, right?
And celebrate. You get to
Well,
celebrate.
well put, David. I mean, what I think some people probably fail to realize is that even though maybe we haven't had this personal experience with a natural burial, it's been done so long within all of our cultures that it's really part of our DNA. It's something that we haven't lost touch with. We just haven't opened up that little box in our brain to expose ourselves to it again. So that was very well put. I'm glad to hear that. And we had extensive conversation about that. And it's really important. I mean, I want all of our viewers to know that, this group of individuals we're speaking to here right today are leaders. They're going to be pioneers in this movement in Latin America, and we're really fortunate to be able to connect the dots. So very well put, David.
Yep. Then there are is Nicholas here, or what was it, Fernando? Michelle, you told me, or Tracy filled me in on
Felipe,
that.
I think. Felipe.
Felipe.
Me, Felipe.
Felipe,
How are
there
you?
you are. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for my camera. But I am not Nicolas, obviously. Nicolas is an executive, but I am trying to do my best. And I have we have from Amazon, we have a different perspective about this, because it's not just the tradition and the culture. We also are facing legal terms in our politics in each country. So
In
we
Colombia,
are in
right?
Colombia, but also in Ecuador, for example, or Peru, that are near to us, because they're very close to us, because we have, for example, if you are put together of these countries, the population is about, I don't know, 70 million people, something like that. But you need to do a lot of effort to get some traction with your position and with your top of mind and all of those things. So we need to we are looking on USA, a very good model to follow, to implement our products here in the region. So we need to understand the culture, we need to understand the politics, but also we need to understand that green burial should be the new traditional services. It's not traditional services against green services or green burial services. We need to talk as a one kind of service. Our products that at the beginning was building, they were building for the green market. Actually, we are working right now to put all our products and make some kind of push in traditional services. So right now we are working on this, and we are very, very excited about this.
So, like, if somebody was to pass away in Colombia, they would call a funeral home, right? Is that the first step in your country? Philippe? Oh, we might have lost him. Well, oh no, I see him. He's there. So, well, just in general,
Well,
yeah, so in general in Latin America, maybe not in the real rural areas out on the farm, but if somebody dies, you would call a funeral home. At least that's what we do here. And then the funeral home usually has these packages they sell you with a casket and embalming and the washing and all of that. So I'm just wondering if in Latin America, if it's the same. Like we have a law here that you are allowed to have your own casket. Yes, the funeral home will have a bunch of caskets they will want to sell you, but we have a law here that you can supply your own casket if you like. Is that the same in your countries, or do you have to buy your casket or your urn from the funeral home?
I'd like to just step in to comment on the fact that, you know, I think it's important for all of us to question where any of these laws came from to begin with,
Yeah,
right? What
exactly.
was the purpose of them? When did they actually get instated, and who were they serving, right? And what I have found where I work, you know, where I live and work and serve, is that there are laws that were tacked on that were in service of the funeral industry, right? Like, you know, that then people interpret in a particular way and then assume that to be the truth for everything, right? So like, as you're saying, there's no law that says that you need to buy a casket from the funeral home, but there's so many people who assume that to be true that they don't even think that that's not even something the law dictates, right? The same
Yeah.
thing with embalming, the same thing with other things. Like, you know, I think most of us here may know that it's totally an oxymoron to say that you have to be hermetically sealed in a casket, because that actually is not, you know, that's going to explode, right? Whatever. So
Yeah.
can we, you know, begin to really question what are the laws that are currently dominating, but not just the laws, but the myths that have been built around these laws? Because what I found in central Mexico is that while there are these laws that were tacked on later, there are no laws that say no to traditional forms, or, you know, like original traditional forms of burial. So,
Yes.
you know, so a big part of the work that, or the, you know, the efforts that I invite all of us, because it's urgent to like, it's to question these laws and to, you know, start to debunk them, and to, you know, because what happened here was like, well, there's no law that says you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
And there
Yes.
are laws that defend your traditions and your cultural, ¿cómo se llama? Costumbres, customs, right? So how can we play with what is in existence before we can actually change the laws, you know, which, anyway, I just needed to
Yeah.
like
No,
say
you're
that.
right. You're absolutely right, because that is a big part of this work is the education. I would say it's 80%. Once the education piece is fulfilled, the family can make the decision, and they usually will choose a green burial because it's so beautiful ultimately. But it's just it's that education, and there are so many assumptions that are made as we moved away from being comfortable with death. And that's just such a big piece of the work. I know in the United States, that's the biggest piece of the work is educating families so they know. I see some hands going up. I'm going to call on you, Veronica, first, and then I'll get to you, David.
Okay, yes, I just wanted to share this because yes, we do make the call to the funeral home, but
Mm-hmm.
for example, I work with the bio-urns here,
Mm-hmm.
and the experience I had, I've been working with this 6 years, and the experience I had was that the first vision I had is, okay, I'm going to go to the funeral homes and send the product and this and that. And I was like so motivated and everything. But in those traditions, because it's not a law, but in the traditions here in Ecuador, they always tell you in the funeral homes that you can get out the ashes from the funerals, from the cemetery. And that's not supposed to happen because it's not a legal thing. You can take your ashes wherever you want to, I don't know, give them back to nature or anything. So there is like these little I don't know how to say it. It's like they block every project that has to do with getting out of the cemetery your ashes or the body or whatever. And it's not really in the law. So totally aligned with Wilka here, and I really admire her because she got the guts to go into the law and just investigate so much and tell
Yeah.
people, okay, where in the law does it say something like this? Is it really legal? Is it really legal that we can get our ashes of our loved ones where we want them to be, you know? So it's
Yes.
super frustrating because it's all part of that. Here in Ecuador, the funeral industry is like very monopolized. It's like all in the same 4 families or maybe 2. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I
Yeah,
just
that's a monopoly for sure. Yeah.
If I could make, Wilka, I'm still smiling. If anyone knows about pushing back against so-called laws, I certainly do. I appreciate the fact that you brought that up because, unfortunately, a lot of these things were created, for through bureaucracy and through lobbyists, and it's an industry, and you're absolutely correct. You all as a group, have to be those voices to question these so-called laws or what's in the best interest. So I applaud all of you for being part of that.
Yes, and in the United States right now, there's I think 3 or 4 lawsuits that we know of around cemeteries or doulaship, death doulas being able to do the work they want to do. So it's still a battle here. And, I don't know what you'll end up facing down the road, but just know, hopefully it'll be easier for you. David, what were you going to say?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I feel very related to what Veronica was saying because when I started this journey, my surprise was the lack of legislation around this. And instead of legislation, there are these uncalled rules. And since our society is also very taboo on talking about death and their loved ones dying and whatnot, the funeral homes have actually established rules that are not really law. And people just buy by them because at the time that this happens to them, it's a crisis, right? So they just
Yes.
respond with whatever it's already established or whatever is easier to make decisions around. So I feel very related to what Veronica said. And I think that that's also one of the biggest strengths for us because changing that mindset and being able to bring this up, these sort of conversations that are had, open up spaces for people to realize that those are not law, and it's just a set of rules that are imposed by the people who are actually making money about this. So I applaud you all for actually taking on this journey because I know it's must be very complex topic to talk about as well.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I see your hand up, Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to point it out that because for me, what Wilka said about like it's not a law that is there that is prohibiting us to do it. It's the lack of knowledge of what you actually have rights to do.
Yeah.
And this is key because yes, in the conversations that I have with people, comes to place what Vero said that no, you cannot take the ashes from here. And I feel like there's a lot of these companies taking advantage of the vulnerability of the situation with the family of the people who dies, and they truly take advantage of these moments that they don't really think through things. They're not going to start putting themselves into, oh, what is my drive? Where is it when a loved one just died? They are
Yeah.
being guided from these people towards their end.
Yeah.
And I do feel like there's 2 ways. Like you can be very confrontative and you can actually go there and say like, no, I want to change this. And this is absolutely a path. In my case, I feel like the key is education and
Yes.
opening up these spaces. So people really go upstairs like, oh, really? Can I take the ashes with me? It's like, yes. So next time this happen, they are gonna say to a friend, it's like, no, 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 you can fight that, or don't worry. So this is going to be planting little seeds everywhere. So
Yeah.
whenever we grow and we as a community go and said like, this is not it, guys. We want more. We want to come back to what is essential. We're
Mhm.
going to have this support. And I think I mentioned this with Ed when we had our spotlight the other time. I feel like that's the strength. Like you're going to have a community behind you supporting your movement because they are educated and because they know that there's different ways of doing it.
Yeah. I love that. I love it too because I feel like the more I feel like the leaders here in the United States, the more that we talk about it with our communities and our families, the more they're comfortable talking about it. Then when the time comes and they deal with their own deaths, it's not so scary, you know? And they feel like they might, they might not know all their legal rights that they have, but they might know one or two. They might know that they have a right to have their own casket, or or have a green burial. They might know that they have a right to have that if there's a cemetery that offers it. And I think that's the beginning steps of reclaiming our own death rituals and what our families want to do and what is right for us. And that is not to say that a funeral home is not necessary. A funeral home or a funeral director or a doula is absolutely a guide to show families how to take care of their own through the death process. And so it's so important, you know, for funeral homes to know that and to encourage them to be open to helping families bring back death and make it cool again. I hate to say it like that, but it is. It needs to come back. It helps us live better. And that got taken away from us. So, do I see Wilka's hand? I do. Wilka, your hand up?
Yes, thank you. This stirs up so much in me because, as you know, I've been talking with Ed and Gretchen since 2019, and I
Mm,
feel like I feel sort of like I've failed because, however many years, 6 years later, it's still not further than it is, right? We've made some small progress. We've achieved a green burial site for reforestation in Mexico and all of that, but it still doesn't feel like it's really happening,
mm-hmm,
right? And just thinking about, we're sort of touching upon like sort of the atmosphere that we are dealing with globally, right? This whole issue of the taboo around death, which drives me crazy, right? Like, of course, we need to open these spaces and have these conversations and break through this ridiculous taboo, right?
mm-hmm,
And it's all connected, right? Like
mm-hmm.
colonization and like syncretism, right? Is that what it is? All of these
Synchronicity.
things, no,
Synchronicity.
syncretism is like when there's like one tradition and then there's another one that's imposed on top of it, and then another one. And then we have these bizarre phenomenon of confused culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't even let us remember what it was before, right? So in this day and age, a lot of people who still have connection to original people traditions are believing that today, whatever is today, is like the only reality and the only truth. And so we're in this status quo of not even questioning these things, right? The first green burial that we actually were able to achieve in Mexico was in a community, where they still have their own sacred glands for burial and everything else. And the younger generations from that community were the ones to protest the natural burial because they're like, this is an outrage. How is there somebody being buried not in a casket? Right? So our identity is confused. And we don't remember where we are coming from, and that we have rights to those things. And so we have all of that, right? This myth of the taboo, and then the fact that then death becomes a crisis, and then we don't have time to think about it, and then that we are dominated and abused by these myths that are not even legal truths, right? And then now we have the issue of death poverty, right? That we can't afford to die, right? And then there's the threat that you know, if we make green burial or natural burial accessible, that everybody's going to want that because it's cheaper than all the things that the current funeral industry is requiring of us, you know. So there's so many issues, right, that we
Yeah, you said that very well.
we are so passionate to want to address, right? So
Yeah.
education, talking about it, demystifying, debunking, all of these things, right? And you know how I feel about I've been going on about this for so many years. It's like we need to, like, who else wants to step up and start to challenge these things? That's my big invitation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know, you have to be the one to go out there and not be afraid to push back. What people forget and don't realize is that the funeral industry is there to serve, not to dictate, not to tell you what you have to do. They are there to serve their families. That's rule number one. So I agree with you, Wilka. I think with these conversations and uniting people, the power of the people will, you know, that'll create the change that's needed.
Yeah, well, I know the number one thing that I believe in the very early days of even getting American cemeteries that were already in existence with the headstones to offer green burial was for people in the community to say to their local cemetery, I'd like to have a green burial. And enough people asking that the cemetery says, okay, we'll offer it. I don't know if that's the way it can happen in the Latin American countries, but it has been an uphill battle, Wilka. I mean, Ed and I were just talking, when did the GBC start? In like 2005, Ed?
Correct. Yes, correct.
And then look at it today, it's still, you know, they have what, 160 or something certified providers. It's not a lot. And even our network, you know, we're 170, I think, or 80. And that's in all of the United States. And there, do you know how many cemeteries and funeral homes are in the United States? Thousands. And believe me, I wish they all were in our network, but it's just an uphill battle. But it's us who need to keep talking to families and communities more than anything else and showing them the beauty of it. Because as Ed says, and as I've experienced, once you experience a green burial or a home funeral, or a family run burial service, it's the most beautiful thing you could be a part of. And that's the goal, is to bring that back to families. So I think that anything we can do to keep going and not get discouraged and to support each other is the best thing. And you guys are doing it. The podcasts, the talks are phenomenal. That reaches so many people. We're blessed to have the internet in that way to reach so many people. Wilka and I would have never met if it wasn't for the internet, probably. So, you know, just we just need to keep going, stay positive. Because it might be one family that gets so healed through, you know, an experience of that
Well,
burial.
let me ask the group this question. Being we have a group of individuals who are making a big difference in Latin America, out of this conversation today, and I know many of you know each other, but what can be done with a group of individuals like yourselves to start to create this change? Is there something, does anyone in this conversation right now have an idea of what they'd like to see? Maybe an organization or a group of everyone being united? Is there a greater aspiration here? Anyone who would like to answer
I see
that?
heads nodding. Veronica's had her hand up for a while. Let's have her talk. Where is she? Oh, you're still muted, hun. Oh. Still muted. There you go.
Now? Okay.
There you are. There you
Oh,
are.
yes. So I just wanted to go like a little back in this cemetery industry because, for example, with the bio-urns, I have had a lot of families that get the bio-urn, for example, for the tree, and they want to leave it in the cemetery because they are Catholic, for example. But the cemetery doesn't receive that kind of situation because the tree has to have an area like for example, like 4 meters between one tree and the other. So since this is um, like a business, like a land business here in our countries, it's a bienes raíces. Michelle, you can help me with the word bienes raíces. It's like when you
Real
sell
estate.
real estate. I'm so sorry. So it's like a real estate business, you know? So they are not like opening spaces for other decisions. If you can have a bio-urn, if you can get out the ashes, if you can have your own casket, for example. The pandemic, we had these paper caskets, but because the people couldn't pay a wooden casket, for example. But you can get your casket, because if I will bury, I don't want to be buried in like my whole body, but I want to be cremated. But if I would take that decision, and I wanted to, for example, have, I don't know, like a wooden casket, like very simple without any toxins or glues or anything, we are not permitted to do that because the cemeteries are selling the caskets or are selling the urns. So what I always question, like this system, are two things. First, the connection between the medical system and the funerary system in our countries. Because if someone is like in the hospital and it's in the end of life process and everything, the family starts to receive like 8 calls from different funeral homes. And the people and the person haven't even died yet. And the decision of the family of calling the funeral home is everything like so accelerated, you know? It's like, yes, everything goes like so fast that the families are so vulnerable. And we don't have that space like to just simply be there, you know? And I think that the Red Latinoamericana of accompanying dying and grief, that we are here, Michelle, Wilka, and I, we are co-founders. We are always giving these conversations to the people, making that cafes, making workshops. We're always active, you know, and I see that there's a lot of people coming together.
Good.
Because it's like changing not only our education, but questioning our education. And I think that's the most valuable thing. We have to question things, not stay, but in Latin America, I don't know, we stay like with our mouth closed. So the cemetery says this, that, and that's what the people do. And the medical service do this, that, and that's what people do. So we are in this like mutter of even this, like to all the people that want to receive this information. And that's amazing now in Latin America.
Yes. And I just want to say, because this might be helpful too, is when you're talking with people about green burial and, you're trying to tell them, I'm using the word tell instead of show. There's a big difference, as a writer, we always talk about telling or showing rather than telling through your writing. And I notice with my own little green burial business, what really catches people's minds is showing how beautiful it can be with the flowers around the opening or the flowers around the urn, and how meaningful that experience can be is what catches the family's interest, and I think that leads them to wanting to know more than anything else, and just trying to tell them, because people are being told things all the time, and visuals. Thank God again for social media in that way that we can show, look at this. Isn't this so much better than that? You know what I mean? Just makes people want it. So yeah, the education, like you say, it's a big part, and it's the part. I think I'm really glad you guys are out there doing that, and having the death cafes now and the podcasts, and the Bosque de Vida cemetery with their little social media videos and showing how pretty it is in the cemetery and what people are doing in there and what they can do is um is really special, I think. It's leading by example. It's leading by showing. And I think that that's the best way to go. It's for Wilka, did you want to say something again?
Yeah, sure. So I'm thinking about sort of addressing Ed's question, right? So one of the things that, as part of La Red, one of the things that we are aspiring to do is to have like a group of people, like a focus group or some kind of way to together brainstorm, what are the options right now? What are the challenges right now? How can we support one another in moving it forward, right? And that we learn from each other with what we found have been the loopholes in the situation, because the only reason why green burial is currently an option in Mexico, even though it is limited to Guanajuato, anybody could come from anywhere to bury in Guanajuato, but we found the loopholes to make it happen, right? And I have been investigating in Puerto Rico now, and there are loopholes there too. It is not that hard, but there is so much myth and assumption that people think their first response is like, oh no, that's illegal. No, you can't do that, right? And so, but then the other thing that I'm finding really interesting is that those who are, and here we are in this space that could become very public, those of us who are trying to make steps are feeling vulnerable in reaching out to get the support that we want, because if the wrong person hears about it, they're going to come out of their way to stop it before we can start it. And this happened to us in Puerto Rico recently, right? So it's kind of shocking that, the opposition is so ready to like pounce, or whatever the word is, and stop something before it even starts. So we are dealing, at least in some of the spaces that I am trying to support people in making green burial happen, that we have to be all secretive about it, and that we can't talk about it until we know for sure that it's happening. And that's a big, struggle that we are having. But at the same time, I am so ready. If there's anyone here who knows that they're just one step away from making it happen, call me, because I will show up in your country and I'll make sure that it gets done. Because I want people like that to show up for me. And I have yet to find someone who's like, I'll stick next to you through the end. Let's make this happen. But I'm willing to do it. And I think there's a few other people around here that are willing to make it happen. So there's, how can we find the openings, even if they're this big? Yeah. Right. And how can we start to like sneak in there, and then whatever it is, right? I think we all have our things, and we need to talk more together about what we are finding. And that's the only way. I feel like, because it's almost like a fluke that it was able to happen here. And even still, it's hard to sustain it. It's hard to like defend it. It's hard for people because this death poverty issue, right? So people are going to choose something that is the most affordable thing, and they almost don't really care. We're talking about, what somebody mentioned, it's a crisis. It's like taboo, it's this and that. And so with that, they can't take the time to think about what they're investing in. You talked about, the real estate issue. There's a real crisis of cemetery real estate, but then those who are able to offer spaces for natural burial, are they going to be approaching it from that like real estate point of view and then make it more expensive, right? So there's a lot of issues. But anyway, all I want to say is I am ready to like go to the front lines with you if you're ready to like make a big fight in your place, wherever you are.
Well, I have a question. What about like, I don't know about here we have a lot of abandoned cemeteries that need revitalization, and they're, sometimes they could be pretty easy to get. Do you guys have those in your countries?
Well, we certainly have a lot of like mass graves
Yeah.
that are like historic sites. I
Ah,
mean,
okay. Yeah.
we can start there. There's a
Yeah.
lot
And
of
then,
brutality that happened when we did not want to like align with like the mother country, Spain. So we can look
right.
into that.
And so and then the groups that would possibly be supportive to that would be historical societies, things like that, that also want to preserve the history. Um, but that I know
Historical
that,
and ecological
yeah, I mean,
preservation.
here, once it's a cemetery, it's always a cemetery. So if it's sitting there doing nothing, there's nothing that can be done with it. So revitalizing it is like the only thing you can do with it, which is great because we can revitalize it and make it something beautiful again. So that's just a little inspiration for anybody who wants to start a cemetery in your country, looking for a space to do it in. And it would be rescuing some history. So I see a hand up from Michelle again, and then Ursula, I'll get you next.
Yes, thank you, Gretchen. I just wanted to respond to the Ed questions about like what we are going to do for the people who are here to try to move a little bit in Latin America to join together efforts and do something. So I just wanted to let you know that we are already joining efforts in Latin America. We have done a lot of work throughout the last years into trying to go to different countries, see what they are, where they are, how is that movement going. So in the network, in Red Latinoamericana de Acompañamiento de Muerte y Duelo, we've gone to different ones. Actually, we went to Mexico for the first Green Burial Alliance, and Gretchen was invited also there too. And we are expanding this movement, and it's growing a lot. This year was in Chile. There was a lot of different angles that were growing. That sometimes I saw with the girls. I wasn't able to go there, but I
Mm-hmm.
saw that it was very overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, it's so many angles that we can tackle right now. And there's so many interesting for a lot of people. Uh, Next year is going to be in Argentina. So there is a
Oh,
movement already in Latin America. We are
yes,
moving, we are going towards something. We would love to have the support of the Global Green Wheeler Alliance in this movement and all the people who are here to start joining efforts and start seeing what are the angles that we can tackle next
yes.
years and such.
It's very exciting. I mean, the way you guys are talking, it's gonna grow. You're gonna attract more people. I'm really glad to hear that. So Chile had even more people join. That's really good. I know that it'll grow. I just know it. You're just in the beginning stages, and there's gonna be some beautiful cemeteries and doing some beautiful burials for families. It's gonna be great. So the next Red Latina encounter is going to be in Argentina, you say. What city? Do you know
Sorry.
yet?
It's Buenos Aires, right, girls?
Buenos
Yes,
Aires.
Buenos Aires in April 2026.
Exactly.
Maybe I can go to that one. I
Oh,
would really
yes,
love
please
to.
come.
Would really love to. Well, I don't want to keep everybody past an hour, but I feel like we just scratched the surface and I want to talk and talk more. I feel that we should do this again in another year and hear more how it's going, what's happening, more from the cemeteries. I'm not sure that Esteban was in there because he never chimed in. So they were facing a hurricane there, and so we didn't really get to hear much from him, but we will. He is on a spotlight, and there's a lot of work to be done. Clearly, we can hear that, but we have leaders in place. More people are being attracted to the movement, and it's going to grow. It
Well,
is.
and I would like to say to everyone watching this or listening, there's power in numbers. Rise to the challenge. Wilka, I would always stand with you in that fight because you're right. You can't win it alone, but with the power of the people behind you, that's how you get your biggest wins. So the education, all the work that you guys are doing together will pay off. It's painfully slow, but think about this.
It is painfully slow.
Yeah, who wants a black eye, meaning like maybe governmental agencies or bureaucracy? Who wants a black eye denying something like this to a family? They're not going to want to have that fight, so keep that in mind. So it's been a pleasure. I mean, this is wonderful. And thanks again for being here.
And just so you know, even the Catholic churches here are starting to embrace green burial. There's a lot of them here that are doing it now. And it does actually align with their beliefs. So we can expound upon that too in future educating. And if you guys ever want to have a meeting, just, together and brainstorm and come up with plans, please reach out to me. Would love to work with you anytime. So, if anybody else have anything they want to say before we end this tonight? It's like, no, okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that we did this and everybody met each other and sign up for the Global Green Burial Alliance and network there and network with each other. I will stay in touch with all of you. And if you ever want a spotlight interview, you got something new to share or talk about, please reach out. We're here to support you, and I'm going to be checking in and helping out. So thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
All right. And this recording will be probably out in a day or two. You can put it on your socials and it'll be up on YouTube and all of that. So, all right. Well, everyone have a great night and we'll see you in cyberspace. Okay. Bye.